This episode is sponsored by W Wellness. I started working with W Wellness a few weeks ago. Well, it's been about 2 weeks now, and I can't begin to tell you how much better I've been feeling. My energy's up, my joints are less achy, and the difference in my eye health has been phenomenal. I just feel like myself again. W Wellness is the UK's first expert-led wellness platform. I got paired with a real nutritionist who really listened, asked the right questions, and helped build a plan that worked for me, not some one-size-fits-all fix. Everything's tailored, simple, and science-backed. And honestly, it's been the first thing that's actually stuck. I'm still on my 12-week journey and I'll keep sharing how it's going. But if you're feeling a bit off and you don't know where to start, this is it. Go to w-wellness.co.uk. It might just be the reset that your body has been asking for. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another solo episode of the I Don't Think We Talk Enough About podcast with me, Helen Marie. And today I'm exploring a topic that I'm sure resonates with us all. Comparison. That inner voice that tells us we're not enough because we don't measure up to what is essentially someone else's highlight reel. I'm going to be looking at where comparison comes from, how it impacts our mental health, and most importantly, how to break free from its grip and then come home to a secure sense of self. And at the end, I've included a calming short meditation to help you reconnect with your worth and your unique journey. But first, let's talk about why we compare ourselves to others in the first place. I guess from a historical perspective, comparison is actually fundamentally a survival strategy. We needed to know who was strongest in our group, fastest or more powerful. It was our way of finding how we could be ultimately safe and where our resources were for safety around us. And from a survival perspective, it makes sense that it used to be in place then. But I feel it's evolved into something that feels quite uncomfortable now for many of us. Psychologist Leon Festinger, who introduced social comparison theory back in the 50s, proposed that humans have an innate drive to evaluate themselves by comparing themselves to others. He proposed that it was how we made sense of our abilities, our worth, and also our place in the world. But I think there's a problem here with today. I feel, and I'm sure you do too, social media bombards us with what feels like, well, not feels like, it is curated highlight reels. Comparisons can quickly spiral from healthy self-evaluation into really deeply harmful and unkind self-behaviors like, well, I see it all the time in my practice, self-criticism, envy, and shame. I see it in my own community on social media daily. Instead of motivating us to grow, I feel it just erodes our confidence or has the power to erode our confidence. And more importantly, disconnect us from our authentic selves. And comparison really does have such a negative impact on our mental health. Research shows that upward comparison, when we look at people we think are doing better than us, often leads to feelings of inadequacy, low self-esteem, and even depression. And one of my favorite comparison quotes by Theodore Roosevelt, comparison is the thief of joy. Sit with that quote for a moment and just let those words settle over you. What do you notice? For me, I notice that I feel I've given someone else the power in determining how I feel about my life. It makes me feel powerless in one breath, and in the next, a feeling of self-agency comes in, where I literally want to shake that negativity of comparison off. Notice what it brings up for you too. When we're constantly measuring ourselves against others, we lose touch with our own values, our own growth, and our own unique path. Instead of feeling connected and inspired, we end up feeling isolated and stuck. That's not a nice place to be in. Often comparison comes from our early years, from the way that we attached with our caregivers. If we grew up in inconsistent or critical environments, we might have learned to look to others for validation and a sense of worth. This deeply affects our sense of self as we mature into adults, and we end up having a more insecure sense of self-worth. When we didn't get the message that we were lovable just as we were, We develop what we call a conditional self-worth, believing that we're only okay if we meet standards or outshine others. That's why comparison often feels so automatic. It's so deep-rooted. It's not just a bad habit. It's deeply seated in the ways we develop to protect ourselves, to keep us surviving, to earn us love, to earn us affection, to earn us attention. But that way we've developed now keeps us stuck. And while early attachment patterns certainly have or play a part in laying the foundation for how we relate to ourselves and others, I don't think it's fair to say it's the only cause. Comparison doesn't come solely from that childhood experience. Yes, it plays a part, but I think it's also heavily influenced by our social surroundings, our cultural expectations, and hugely social media. Because let's be honest, social media bombards us with idealized images, highlight reels that invite constant upward comparison. If you think of lives before social media, actually, I'm sure there's plenty of you listening that can't remember lives before social media, but comparison would only have happened within our small communities. And there would have been context available and a deeper feeling of community and support, especially over competition. I always think about there would have only been maybe one or two, let's say, cake makers or bakers. There might have been one or two writers, authors, or photographers. One or two people with maybe the big house or the flashy car. But now we are inundated when we go on our phones. So we have this false sense that everyone is a brilliant writer. Everyone has a flashy car. Everyone has expensive holidays. So it's really easy to fall into that trap of less than when we view it through a lens of social media. But also earlier than that, our education systems, think back to when you were at school, just how often competition was promoted. It was promoted over collaboration. It was promoted over connection. And it constantly reinforced the idea that our worth is based on outperforming others. We internalize those messages. We even see it in workplaces now. But before we dive into tools for escaping the comparison trap, I want to come back to this issue of sense of self and how building a secure, loving relationship with ourselves can literally transform how we relate to others and fundamentally reduce the need for comparison. When our sense of self is fragile, it's easy for comparison to creep in. We start measuring our worth against someone else's story. We don't feel good enough in our foundation. Of course we compare. But when we cultivate a secure sense of self, we're rooted in our own values, experiences, and inner wisdom. We call this self-attachment or earned secure attachment. It's the idea that even if we didn't get consistent support growing up, we can learn to give that to ourselves as adults. You may have heard me in other episodes on this podcast where I've spoken about the term reparenting, and I promise I'll do a solo episode soon on this entirely. When we talk about a secure sense of self, one of my favourite resources is Dr. Dan Siegel. He talks about the importance of mind sight. This is the ability to tune into our own thoughts and feelings with curiosity and compassion, just as we would to a friend or someone we deeply care about. This practice helps us become less reactive to external comparisons because we trust our own worth, regardless of what others are doing. And as Brené Brown, one of my favourites, beautifully says, owning our own story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing we'll ever do. Actually, Brené's work, I think, is truly wonderful in assisting us in coming back to that nurturing sense of self. But comparison, all it does is pull us away from that secure sense of self. So instead of asking, who am I? We ask, how do I measure up? Instead of embracing our unique, beautiful journey, we try to fit into someone else's mold. This episode is sponsored by Simple Practice. The work you do holds so much heart, and managing a practice shouldn't take you away from that. If the behind the scenes tasks ever feel heavy, things like scheduling, documentation, billing, Simple Practice is here to help lighten that load. Simple Practice is an all-in-one EHR designed with care to support your practice, your time, and your clients. Everything you need. Secure notes, telehealth, calendar management, even insurance and billing. It all lives in one place, working together to bring more ease to your day. Because when the admin side feels simpler, there's more space for the work that truly matters, for presence, connection, and care. If you're looking for a way to feel more supported in your practice, visit the link in my show notes. For new customers, you can get an exclusive promotion by going to simplepractice.com/Helen Marie and get a 7-day free trial, then 70% off for 4 months. Please see show notes for more details. So I've pulled together some tools that I think you might find helpful. These are based on DBT, which is dialectical behaviour therapy. You may or may not have heard of it. And ACT, which is acceptance and commitment therapy. These are two powerful evidence-based approaches that I come back to time and time again in my work, and they can really help us come back to a more secure sense of self. So when you catch yourself comparing, because we all do, pause and offer yourself kindness. In DBT, we might use self-soothing. So engage all of your senses. Wrap yourself in a cozy blanket. Listen to calming music. Visualize a comforting scene. These simple acts remind us that we're worthy of care. And in that, notice the sensations in your nervous system. These can give you really helpful information on guiding back your nervous system to safety. You could also practice a concept we called self as context. We'd separate ourself from the experience we're having. So what we do is we step back and recognize that we are not defined by a single thought or feeling. We are simply the observer of our experience, not the experience itself. Creating that distance can be incredibly helpful in the moment. We need to be asking ourselves questions. What do I want my life to be about? Who do I want to be? So instead of measuring up to someone else's standards, start to get clear on your own values, your creativity, compassion, connection, authenticity, whatever matters most to you. When we align our actions with those values, we can stay far more grounded in our own path rather than getting swept away by others constantly. I find it useful to journal on these when I find comparison creeping in. And another technique I love is actually from ACT, and it's about learning to diffuse ourselves from sticky thoughts. So when you catch yourself thinking, I'll never be as successful as them, instead of getting sucked into that spiraling thought of that, which is never helpful, try saying, I'm noticing the thought that I'll never be as successful as them. This creates distance from the thought, reminding you it's just a mental event, and we have thousands of those in a day. It's not the ultimate truth about you. And again, I come back to that saying I use a lot. Your thoughts are not facts. I love using this technique because I notice that my breath has more space. My inhalations are deeper. It helps disentangle us from those comparison thoughts. When we integrate these tools, self-soothing, acceptance, clarifying the values that we want to have, diffusing from those sticky thoughts, we path the way to building a more secure, loving relationship with ourselves. And that's integral to helping us free ourselves from the grips of comparison. We find ways to remember that we are more than our comparisons. We are whole, worthy, and always evolving. I'm going to share 5 more tools now. These are simple tools that I come back to time and time again. First one, name it to tame it. When you notice comparison creeping in, pause, name it. I'm comparing myself to someone else right now. Even saying that out loud to yourself can really ground you in the moment. It can really help bring you back to yourself. You can really catch yourself, notice yourself being pulled away from you. Number 2, shift to self-compassion. Instead of constantly beating yourself up for not measuring up, treat yourself with the kindness you would a friend. I love Dr. Christine Neff's work on self-compassion. If you're not already familiar with her work, I really do advise you check her out. Beautiful work, beautiful books, beautiful meditations. And she suggests using phrases like, "This is a moment of suffering, and suffering is a part of being human. May I be kind to myself in this moment." Isn't that just beautiful? 3, limit social media consumption. Or if you can't, curate your feed so that what you're scrolling is beautiful, inspiring, and filling you with joy. Take breaks, take detoxes, and remember that if you see something that you do feel comparison coming in on, remember it's a filtered highlight reel. It's not the messy, beautiful reality of what it is to be human. The reality, honestly, is often very different to what is shared. 4, focus on your values. We talked about this a little bit in the previous section, but I did want to come back to it because comparison fundamentally thrives on others' measures of success. So come back to the question, what truly matters to you? When you answer this, you're far less likely to get sidetracked by what others are doing. And 5, celebrate your progress. Maybe keep a success journal. Track your own milestones, your own achievements. Sometimes we're so quick to forget what we've achieved. So just reflect for a moment here when you feel comparison creep in again. And I'm going to leave you with one other, actually. I'm adding a 6th one to my 5, just as it came in. I would guide you to reframe comparison as inspiration. So when you notice yourself comparing, ask, what can I learn from this person's journey? And instead of feeling threatened or less than, why not let their story inspire you? Why not let it shift from competition to curiosity? What values, habits, skills can you take to be inspired by? And I remember reading an article by Polly Vernon recently on Substack. And she said so beautifully, if them, why not you? And there's nothing holding you back. If you'd like to try, be inspired. It's a much nicer reframe on comparison. And as in all of my solo episodes, I'm going to leave you with a short meditation. And today's one aims to help you reconnect with your sense of self and hopefully let go of comparison. Find a comfortable position, either sitting or lying down. Let your hands come to rest gently on your lap or by your sides. If it feels right, close your eyes. Take a deep breath in through your nose and slowly exhale through your mouth. Let's do that 2 more times. Inhaling deeply and exhaling slowly. 1 more time. Now bring to mind a moment when you felt proud of yourself. Not because of someone else's opinion, but because you showed up in a way that felt really true to who you are. Maybe it was a time you spoke really kindly to yourself, or you showed compassion to someone else, or pursued something you love. Allow that memory to fill your awareness. What do you notice? Maybe there's warmth, pride. Maybe there's a gentle strength that comes from within. Now notice any comparison thoughts that might arise. Maybe it's a voice saying you're not enough, or that someone else is doing better. Gently acknowledge that thought. I'm noticing the thought that I'm not enough. Imagine that thought as a cloud drifting gently in the breeze across your horizon. Observe it without clinging to it. Watch it drift away, reminding yourself that it's just a thought, not the truth of who you are. Bring your attention back to your breath. Feel your chest rising and falling. With each inhale, breathe in self-acceptance and compassion. With each exhale, release comparison and self-judgment. Stay here for a moment longer, inhaling self-acceptance, compassion, exhaling comparison, self-judgment. And say to yourself softly and kindly, I am enough just as I am. My story is my own, and I can choose to make it a beautiful one. And importantly, I'm learning to trust myself. Let these words sink in for a moment. Allow yourself to feel the sense of calm and security that comes from embracing who you are, exactly as you are. Now take one final deep breath in and exhale slowly. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes. Thank you so much for sharing this time with me today. I love recording these solo episodes for you. Comparison is a deeply human experience, but it doesn't have to define us. By practicing self-compassion, reconnecting with our values, accepting where we are, and learning to diffuse from unhelpful thoughts, we can start to build that beautiful, secure sense of self that's grounded in our own worth. And if today's episode has resonated with you, I'd love for you to leave a review or rate the episode, or even share it with someone who you think might need it too. And if you'd like more resources on mental health, self-acceptance, and emotional resilience, check the show notes or visit my website, helenmariepsychotherapy.com. And as always, keep choosing you too.